All right, so this is the first of two sets of notes we're going to have on the Crusades to break this down for you in order to make it a little easier for you to digest. So let's start out page 7 of your notes. Pause as you need to, and let's get going. All right, so timeline-wise, you got to remember this is the Dark Ages over here. The Dark Ages was about a 400-year period created by the end of the Roman Empire. The light of European Roman knowledge had disappeared from Europe, but that kind of ended with the crowning of Charlemagne as the first Holy Roman Emperor, uniting the power of the Catholic Church with Germanic kings. Charlemagne in particular was really big on building schools and teaching people and making sure that knowledge was being regained. This created the period that we start to call the Middle Ages. Sometimes the two terms are used interchangeably, but officially the Middle Ages begin and the Dark Ages end with the crowning of Charlemagne. So what we're going to be talking about in this period is something called the Crusades. The Crusades were a series of wars between the years of 1093 and 1291 Common Era. These were a series of religious wars fought between the Muslims and the Christians over a region called the Holy Land. Again, notice I'm going to call your attention to up here so you can know what page we're on. So the Holy Land was taken over by Muslims. Christians decided they were going to fight a war to take it back. So in the West, we've got the Catholics. In the East, we have the Orthodox Christians, and the green area you see on your map, those are areas controlled by the Muslims. So remember, the green and blue, right? The Roman Catholic Christians and the Eastern Orthodox Christians, they're both Christians. They just have some disagreements over who should be in charge of Christianity, what language religious services should be practiced in, but they're both Christians, right? Muslims, on the other hand, they're not Christians. They don't believe that Jesus was the Son of God. And so Christians call Muslims heathens or non-believers and use this kind of rally Christians against the Muslims. So here's we see an image of the Muslim armies that took the Holy Land away from Christians. It is also important to remember that Christians, Muslims, and Jews all worship the same God, right? The God of Abraham, if you go back to our early word religions unit, that's the God they worship. All right, so Muslims conquer Israel, an area known as the Holy Land. Israel is down here. This is the Holy Land, specifically the city of Jerusalem, where Christians believe that Jesus had been killed, crucified by the Romans, and had returned from the dead to forgive the sins of mankind. Muslims also find Jerusalem to be really important because it is where they believe their holy prophet Muhammad, who they said never died, was actually ascended to heaven, lifted up by angels into heaven in the city of Jerusalem. So Muslims find it extremely important, Christians find it extremely important, and Jews also find Jerusalem to be really important because it was the capital of their ancient kingdom of Israel, which you remember was conquered by the Romans, about 1,000 years before this. All right, so the Byzantines ask Rome for help, the Catholics for help, and then they send knights from the three major kingdoms, England, the Holy Roman Empire, and France, to help retake the Holy Land. This is the essence of what the Crusades are. All right, so this is kind of the series of events. So the Muslims capture Jerusalem. They take it away from the Byzantine Empire. You'll remember the Byzantine Empire is right over here. This is the Eastern Roman Empire. So remember, the Roman Empire fell in the West, which had its capital in Rome, but the East became renamed the Byzantine Empire, right? The Byzantine Empire controlled the Holy Land, and a group called the Seljuk Turks, which were Muslim, had pushed into territories controlled by the Byzantines, and they specifically took away this region called the Holy Land, for which it contained religious cities that were really important to Christians, Jews, and Muslims. All right, so the Muslims capture the city of Jerusalem and the Holy Land in general, and they tell Christians you can't visit the Holy Land anymore. Matter of fact, if you do come here, we are going to attack you. So this was not Muslims in general. This was just the group of Muslims called Seljuk Turk Muslims. So Islam is the religion. Seljuk Turk is kind of the kingdom, the ruling group that kind of took over the region and then said, we're not going to let Christians down here anymore. The Byzantines were very afraid of this because the Seljuk Turks are, of course, pushing into their territories. And if you remember from our map activity, we're getting very close to the capital city of Constantinople. That's the capital city of not just the Byzantine Empire, but also Eastern Orthodox Christianity. So the Byzantines not only couldn't send Christians down to go visit their holy cities, but they were afraid the Seljuk Turks were going to invade and attack their capital city of Constantinople. Moving on. So in 1093, the Byzantine Emperor Comnenus sent a letter to Europe asking for help, and Pope Urban II, and here you can see a statue of Pope Urban II, he used this as an opportunity not only to reclaim the Holy Lands, but he was a very smart guy. He realized that you had a Eastern Orthodox Christian emperor in the Byzantine Empire asking a Roman Catholic pope for help. Remember, Eastern Orthodox Christians and Catholic Christians have a kind of fundamental disagreement about who is in charge of the Christian faith. So Pope Urban II said, hey, if I can help out the Byzantines, not only can we capture these religious cities that are important to Christians, but maybe that will convince Christian Orthodox Christians to switch over and become Catholic Christians, which would increase the number of people under the direct influence of Pope Urban II and all future Catholic popes. So this was not just about taking over holy cities for Pope Urban II. This was about also helping convince Eastern Orthodox Christians become Roman Catholic Christians. So Pope Urban II orders the First Crusade in 1095. Basically what he says in this speech is that the Holy Land has been taken over by people who don't believe in God, which isn't true. Muslims believe in the same God. He said that all Christians should be upset about this, and that if you take up arms and you march down into the Holy Land and you fight a religious war to take back the Holy Land from the Seljuk Turks, then all your sins will be forgiven, and if you die in battle, you will immediately be granted access to heaven. So remember, the Catholic Church kept control in feudal Europe by threatening eternal damnation of your soul if you don't follow what the church says. This is the opposite. This is him saying, if you go down and you fight in the Crusades, you will have your sins forgiven and you'll be given eternal paradise in heaven. So pretty big incentive, right? That's important to remember. The Crusaders were promised eternity in heaven, immediate entrance to heaven if they fought in the Crusades to take the Holy Land back from the Seljuk Turks. All right, so that's what that means. So let's move forward. So why is this a good thing? Well, for two reasons. One, nobles and royalty could get rid of the younger sons who inherited nothing from their fathers like their older brothers did, and it stopped the knights from fighting each other. So what do these two things mean? Well, first, on the left side here, the nobles and the royalty, right, they'd have many, many children because you didn't know how, if they were going to live. So the oldest son would always inherit everything from their father. If you were the younger son, you got nothing. This can lead to a lot of fights between younger and older brothers over who deserves the inheritance. Now, you're probably asking, well, what about the daughters? Daughters were married off to other people and were no longer considered part of the family, so they didn't get any inheritance. So this helped the nobles and the royalty from having the children fight each other. On this side over here, there was this added benefit. Remember during the Dark Ages, the Vikings, the Magyars, and the Muslims were invading into European territories, so Europe became highly militarized. So we had these knights, professional soldiers, whose job it was essentially to defend all the kingdoms from Vikings, Magyars, Muslims, bandits, anyone else, because it was a very lawless time. When the Dark Ages end and you start the Middle Ages, there's more stability. The Vikings aren't attacking as much. The Magyars aren't attacking as much. The rule of law is kind of brought back. But now you've got all these knights laying around, right? So what are they doing? They're fighting each other. So what are you going to do with them? You send the younger sons of the nobility as well as the knights down to the Middle East, and you get rid of them. Problem solved. Right? So by 1097 Common Era, they get to the capital city of the Byzantine Empire, Constantinople, and by 1099 Common Era, they retook Jerusalem. So 1095, Pope Urban II, or 1093, the Emperor of the Byzantine Empire asked the Pope for help. 1095, the Pope says, we're going to create a holy war to retake the Holy Land and bring the Eastern Christians back into the Catholic Church. By 1097, the Christian Crusaders get to Constantinople. By 1099, they get to Jerusalem, and they win a surprise victory, taking over Jerusalem, and they establish what are called the Crusader states. So the Crusader states are these states right here in orange that are new kingdoms created by the, Crusaders. The problem is they're very vulnerable to attacks from Muslims. So you got to remember, right, this is where all the Christians are. This is where a lot of Muslim kingdoms are. So when you have these kingdoms, they're very vulnerable to attacks from Muslim kingdoms, but they're very far away from where you can get reinforcements from other Christians. So by 1144, one of the Crusader states falls to the Muslims, and the result is a second crusade is launched to retake it. This second crusade, unlike the first one, was awful. It failed, was not successful, and that is where we're going to leave these notes. All right, well, join us back for your next video lecture, which is going to be covering the second part of these notes, bottom of page 8 through page 9.